Synopsis. Living in the peaceful village of Dreamwood, surrounded by old forests and undulating hills, were Eva and Marco Bellini, a seemingly ideal couple. It appeared that their life together was a mosaic of respect and common goals. The envy of their neighbors were Eva, a successful artist who enjoyed reading mystery novels, and Marco, a charming businessman with a long list of satisfied customers. However, under the surface of their happy marriage, there was a sinister secret that was just waiting to ruin everything. Eva found an expensive lipstick brand she had never seen before in Marco's car one fateful evening. It was a bold red, the kind of color she would never wear. Once suspicion was aroused, Eva started to suspect Marco of infidelity as her creative mind crafted complex narratives. When she discovered additional proof of his treachery, including love letters, schedules for covert meetings, and pictures of him with another woman, her suspicions were quickly validated. Enraged and heartbroken, Eva carefully thought out her retaliation. She waited patiently, refining every aspect until the evening she carried out her strategy. In an isolated cabin on the outskirts of town, Marco and his mistress, Elena Kovac, a stunning but gullible woman, were discovered dead. After the community was shocked, the police began a thorough investigation to find out what was going on. The investigation. Detective Samuel Cruz, an experienced investigator renowned for his keen intelligence and unwavering resolve, took on the case. In his career, Cruz had witnessed a lot of homicides, but the Bellini case was especially mysterious. The cabin scene was painstakingly set up to resemble a tragic accident. The bodies of Marco and Elena were discovered next to each other, and there was evidence of a potential gas leak. But Cruz thought there was something strange about the scene. The attention to detail suggested that this was not a coincidence. Cruz and his colleagues found multiple irregularities as they went through the evidence. Both victims' systems had traces of sedatives, and the gas valve had been tampered with. There were also doubts about the chronology of their deaths. Their apparent incapacitation prior to the gas leak suggested that there may have been foul play involved. Cruz's gut told him that this was murder, not an accident. The personal lives of Elena and Marco were also included in the investigation. Even though Eva seemed calm on the outside, she started to draw attention. She had the incentive, and her creative background implied that she might be able to pull off such a complex scheme. Cruz started probing Eva's life more thoroughly in an effort to find any holes in her alibi or indications of strange behavior. Cruz observed a subtle change in the tone of conversations with neighbors and friends about Eva, despite the impression that she was a loving wife. There were rumors of conflict between the couple, and on the day of the killings, some people claimed to have seen Eva's car close to the cabin. Further hints came from a search of the Bellini residence. Cruz discovered a diary stashed among Eva's canvases in her studio. The diary entries depicted a woman who was rejected, describing her mental anguish and mounting doubts about Marco's adultery. Along with the lipstick and other pieces of evidence, one entry stood out in particular. "He thinks he can deceive me, but he underestimates my resolve. He will pay for his betrayal." This chilling entry painted an unfavorable picture. Cruz thought he was getting close to the truth, but he still needed hard proof to show Eva was involved. Marco's car's lipstick was forensically analyzed, and the results showed a fingerprint. Since it belonged to Elena, Eva's motivation was further supported, and her role in Marco's life was established. Cruz also found a sedative purchase receipt that linked the meds to a pharmacy close to the Bellini home. Eva was seen purchasing the sedatives 1 week prior to the killings in surveillance footage. Eva insisted on her innocence in the face of overwhelming evidence, maintaining a cool-headed interview style. Her years of experience performing in the art world had given her impressive acting skills. She presented herself as a widow in mourning, crushed by her husband's sudden passing, and a victim of circumstance. But Cruz's unrelenting search for the truth eventually got to her. He was aware that Ava's feelings held the secret to solving the case. Cruz exploited her weaknesses in a crucial, last-minute interview by implying that their friends were aware of Marco's treachery. The strategy was successful. Ava broke down and admitted, her voice quivering with a mixture of relief and rage. Ava's admission was a masterwork of irrational reasoning and unfiltered passion. She talked about her broken heart, her painstaking preparation, and how she carried out the ideal crime. Under the guise of reconciliation, she had enticed Marco and Alina to the cabin, set up the gas leak, and then taken drugs. She experienced a strange sense of justice as she watched them die. Cruz now possessed the last piece of the puzzle after Eva's confession. The mystery that had engulfed Dreamwood was solved, but the residents were left to face the unsettling fact that even seemingly flawless lives can conceal sinister secrets. Born Ava Martinez, Ava Bellini was a multi-talented and multi-secretive woman. Her grandmother, a well-known painter, encouraged her artistic abilities while she was growing up in a small town. Ava discovered early on how to use art to communicate her feelings, and she learned to use her creativity as a weapon as well as a shield. Her family was unstable during her formative years. Her mother battled depression, and her father was distant. Ava turned art into her haven and her escape. In a nearby city, she happened upon an art exhibition where she met Marco Bellini. Ava's talent and beauty enthralled Marco, a charming and driven businessman. After a fast-paced courtship that ended in a grand wedding, Marco and Ava moved to Dreamwood, where Marco's business took off and Ava started receiving praise for her paintings. Ava always had a persistent feeling of insecurity, even though their life seemed ideal. Her nervousness was heightened by Marco's frequent business travels and late-night meetings. Her work consumed her, but she couldn't shake the gnawing suspicion that someone was cheating on her. The tipping point came when she discovered the lipstick in his car. Her creative mind, which was capable of producing exquisite works of art, veered toward darker ideas. Ava was a very strong opponent because of her attention to detail and original ideas. She used her cunning to manipulate evidence and divert attention from suspicion, meticulously planning every aspect of her retaliation. Her diaries, which served as a first vent for her suffering, later served as a guide for her strategy. Ava was able to fool even those closest to her by hiding her feelings and maintaining a composed demeanor. The main players. Samuel Cruz, detective. Samuel Cruz was an experienced detective with a track record of cracking the hardest cases. Cruz had a strong bond with the Dreamwood community, having been born and raised there. Throughout his career, he never wavered in his pursuit of justice, and his astute observational abilities and sharp mind made him an excellent detective. Cruz's private life stood in stark contrast to his career achievements. He had avoided relationships after a traumatic divorce and threw himself into his work as a way to cope with his inner turmoil. Cruz was motivated by a sense of responsibility and a personal bond with the community to solve the Bellini case. He had a reputation for reading people, and he had a gut feeling that Ava wasn't who she seemed to be. Cruz was well liked by the Dreamwood Police Department for his meticulous approach to the investigation and his capacity for victim empathy. Bellini Marco. Charming businessman Marco Bellini had a talent for winning people over. His charm and business sense had enabled him to create a profitable business, and his peers looked up to him. But beneath his charm was a darker side to Marco. His many relationships and cunning disposition ultimately brought him to ruin. The most recent and riskiest relationship Marco had was with Alina Kovac. Alina was an incredibly attractive woman who was a consultant for one of Marco's business partners. Though risky, their relationship was intense. Due to his conceit, Marco thought he could continue living a double life without facing any repercussions. However, he underestimated his wife's determination and the thoroughness of her suspicions. Kovac Alina. Alina Kovac was a driven consultant who attracted attention everywhere she went, thanks to her stunning appearance. She had a history of forming relationships with influential men and leveraging her wit and charm to further her professional standing. Alina thought she could manage the consequences of her risky relationship with Marco Bellini. She underestimated Ava's ability to exact revenge, which led to her terrible demise. Alina's life was characterized by deliberate actions, with every relationship serving as a stepping stone toward her career objectives. She never imagined that his wife would end up being her executioner. Instead, she saw Marco as just another opportunity. Alina was a fascinating character due to her ambition and beauty, but she ultimately perished because she was unable to recognize the danger she was in. The hearing. Eva's trial gained national attention and became a sensation in the media. Reporters crowded the courtroom, eager to document every nuance of the dramatic proceedings. Eva was presented by the prosecution as a ruthless killer, complete with a detailed plan and all of the evidence that could be used against her. On the other hand, Eva's defense team painted her as a victim of emotional abuse, who was pushed to the brink by her husband's adultery. They contended that the severe emotional trauma she experienced caused a brief state of insanity, which is what led to her actions. Eva's emotional turmoil described in her testimony was in stark contrast to her calm demeanor during the trial. The testimony of Detective Cruz was crucial. He went into great detail about the investigation, emphasizing how well the killings were planned and carried out. Cruz made an impression on the jury with his ability to make connections and give a coherent story. Eva's guilt was evident from his cool, collected account of the evidence. Eva's testimony proved to be the pivotal moment in the trial. The jury was moved by her depiction of a heartbroken woman pushed to the edge by her husband's treachery. The prosecution's cross-examination, however, undermined her defense's claim of temporary insanity by exposing the cold, calculated nature of her actions. Ultimately, Eva was found guilty of murder by the jury. The community reacted to the verdict with a mixture of sadness and relief. The artist who had once mesmerized Dreamwood, Eva Bellini, was now a convicted murderer. The outcome of the trial had a profound effect on the community and served as a frightening reminder of the sinister secrets that can be kept behind closed doors. The repercussions. The village of Dreamwood was left reeling after Eva Bellini was found guilty of killing her husband Marco and his mistress Alina. The community was forced to face the truth that not everything was as it seemed in their quaint town when the darker undertones of a seemingly flawless marriage were revealed during the trial. Eva received a life sentence without the chance of release. The judge underlined the cold, calculated nature of her crime while also acknowledging her emotional distress. Eva had an uncanny calmness about her during the sentencing, as if she had accepted her fate long before the verdict was rendered. Her eyes, which used to be bright and expressive, now reflected a cold, hard emptiness. Detective Samuel Cruz gained some local hero status following the trial. The truth itself was devastating, but Marco and Alina had received justice thanks to his unwavering dedication to finding it. Cruz was not particularly comforted by the result, even with the honors and recognition. He had suffered a great deal as a result of the case, having to face his own trust and betrayal issues, as well as reopen old wounds. Once a representation of prosperity and happiness, the Bellini home served as a somber reminder of what had happened. The couple was the subject of whispers from neighbors and the once vibrant home appeared to be haunted by its troubled past. Eventually, the property began to fall apart, a physical representation of the emotional devastation left behind. The introspection. Ava painted and thought back on her deeds during the days as she adapted to her new life behind bars. She was given art supplies by the prison, and her cell served as her studio. Her art evolved into darker, more reflective pieces, each of which served as a window into her troubled soul. She declined multiple requests for interviews and refused to speak with the media. Rather, she channeled her ideas and feelings into her artwork, producing a collection of pieces that became known as the Bellini Collection. Despite being made while in prison, these paintings attracted a lot of interest from the art community. Ava's work captivated both collectors and critics due to its eerie beauty and unadulterated emotion. Eventually, the collection was on show in a prominent gallery, with all proceeds going to a non-profit that supports women who have experienced domestic abuse. Ava's art managed to have a positive effect, even though her name would always be linked to her crimes. Even though he solved the case, Detective Cruz found it difficult to deal with the fallout. The Bellini case served as a sobering reminder of the depths of dishonesty and the complexity of interpersonal relationships. With the scars from his divorce still apparent, Cruz found himself going back to revisit his own past. With a resolve to recover and move on, he found comfort in therapy. Beneath the Surface, Unraveling the Bellini Murders, a book that offered an in-depth look at the investigation and insights into the meticulous work that went into solving the case, published Cruz's reflections on the case. Readers were moved by Cruz's open description of his own emotional journey, which also highlighted the personal toll that these cases can have on those who seek justice. Dreamwood was no longer the peaceful, dreamlike town it once was. The Bellini killings had a lasting impact on the neighborhood. Even though things eventually returned to somewhat normal, the case served as a warning that looks can be deceiving. Following the trial, community initiatives were launched with the goal of promoting mental health and fostering stronger relationships. The people of the town grew closer to one another and more watchful of one another. Despite being tragic, the Bellini murders changed the community by promoting candid conversation about touchy subjects. In summary, the tragic tale of Ava and Marco Bellini serves as a stark reminder of the complexity that lurks beneath the surface of seemingly ideal lives. Driven by betrayal and emotional turmoil, Ava's descent into darkness and her subsequent quest for vengeance resulted in a tragedy that changed Dreamwood forever. Although the case was resolved thanks to Detective Samuel Cruz's unwavering pursuit of justice, he still had personal demons to face. The Bellini murders are ultimately a monument to the strength of human emotion and the extent one will go to when pushed to the limit. Once a well-known artist, Ava Bellini now spends her days thinking back on her past transgressions, which have permanently damaged her reputation. Nevertheless, she keeps sharing her sorrow and regret via her art, providing a window into the tormented mind of a woman who lost everything to the darkness inside of her. Dreamwood continues on, carrying the lessons it has learned from the catastrophe. The community's tenacity and capacity to turn suffering into advancement serve as a source of inspiration, showing us all that even in the most difficult circumstances, development and recovery are possible. The tale of the Bellini case, which combines revenge, betrayal, and love, will be passed down through the years as a moving part of the town's past.